So this is Effects of Law Regulation on Bat Hunting, Selling, and Consumption by Leslie Alvarez and Maya Ochoa. Overexploitation is a large threat to wildlife, and overhunting can cause a serious decline in species population, causing that species to become endangered and even extinct, in turn disrupting the interconnectedness of the ecosystem. Bat hunting in particular is a global issue, causing disruption to bats' role as natural pollinators and pest control. Bats are hunted in many countries around the globe for food, medicine, and sometimes because they're considered a nuisance. In some areas, bushmeat is cheaper than traditional protein sources, so bats are targeted, and some bushmeat hunters even make their income solely from their hunting practices. Additionally, bats as well as other exotic meats are considered a delicacy or are used for traditional medicinal purposes, thus increasing the demand for their meat. Because laws vary by region, we didn't know how prevalent bat hunting laws were and if those laws were effective in protecting bats from overhunting. This led us to pose our research question: what is the relationship between countries that have laws to protect against bat hunting and the number of instances of bat hunting, selling, and consumption in that country? We hypothesized that countries with laws in place to protect bats will have less instances of bat hunting, selling, and consumption because people will be de-incentivized by the punishment. To conduct our research, we utilized social media to find instances of the hunting, selling, and consumption of bats. To do this, we searched relevant keywords on social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Google News, and Reddit. And when we came across a post that had proof of the hunting, selling, or consumption of bats, we extracted that post into a spreadsheet where we organized our data by country. Upon the formation of our research question, we began researching what was being done to protect bats, and this took us into two routes of research. So it was what laws were in place to protect bats and whether or not these laws were enforced. To find bat and animal hunting regulation laws, we looked at government documents and public policy records, and to find out whether or not these laws were enforced, we looked at UN conference documents, destination hunting sites, and hunting forums. We also organized this data into a spreadsheet by country, and we were able to compare the instances of hunting, selling, and consumption based on the absence or presence of laws. Laws being defined as any law that regulates animal hunting, which may or may not include bats. Because whether or not a country had a hunting regulation law was not always a yes or no answer, we had to make a map that would account for this. So in this map, we can see that the red countries are ones where there is a law present and it is enforced, while the blue is law absent and no regulation. In addition, in countries where bat meat is sourced for protein or for medicinal use, there tends to be little to no regulation of laws, if there are any, and this is just due to the cultural popularity of bat meat and bushmeat in that area.
So upon completion of our research, we organized our data into these bar graphs. The y-axis is the mean number of hunting, selling, and consumption occurrences that we encountered on social media. The x-axis divides the graph into hunting, selling, and consumption of bats categories. Think of it as 3 bar graphs in one. What we found was that countries with the highest occurrences of bat hunting, selling, and consumption actually had laws already in place. Initially, we were taken aback since this was true for all 3 categories. Now, we don't think it's the laws encouraging people to do these things. We actually hypothesized that there was possibly pre-existing issues with bat hunting, selling, and consumption in these countries, which is why the laws were passed. For example, Lubbock would not have laws to regulate scuba diving because it's not a prevalent issue. It's not an issue at all here. So it's not logical that there would be laws in place. In the case of these countries, it is logical that there would be laws in place for these things if there already was a pre-existing problem. Also, for our data, it's notable to add that some of these laws were not exclusive to bats. We also looked into the enforcement of these laws. We concluded that when it comes to these conservation laws, enforcement truly does matter. We organized this data exactly like the previous graph to illustrate the difference. We found that countries that enforce their laws tend to have lower occurrences. We did find a discrepancy in this conclusion when it came to the selling of bats, but we hypothesized that this is likely due to enforcement not being effectively targeted towards the selling of bats. So why does this information matter? Why is our data important? This data is important and relevant to science because of the importance of conservation. Using this data, or an expansion of it, can be used to prioritize lobbying funds so that they can be used towards countries or regions where money can be used effectively, where it can make a difference in conservation. Also, enforcement data can be used to persuade lawmakers to not only create, but also enforce protective bat laws, as we know that enforcement matters a lot when it comes to the effectiveness of these laws. So these are our cited works, and we wanted to give a special thanks to our student collaborators and our research coordinators and advisors. Thank you for your time and for your attention. We welcome any questions that you may have.